All right, good evening, everyone. Thanks for coming, taking time out of your busy schedule to come in for our first official public meeting, and there'll be others. And in the audience, there are members of the school committee, members of the school department, state representatives, members of the school committee, city council, and the team that's working on finance, the purchasing department. There's a whole bunch of people that it takes to build a project today. And so the one thing I'll start off with, my sort of disclosure, is that the process has changed. In fact, every time we've done a project, the process changed, and they refine it. And one of the things you'll see tonight is the process by which we look at a school and decide whether or not that school needs renovation expansion, or a completely new building. And that isn't just a walk through the building and a decision made at the end of the walk. It is very labor intensive. It looks at all the mechanicals, and it's really good due diligence for the taxpayers. And there was a time in the state where people would build a school, let it get run down, and then come in and look for, a project to be built and get reimbursed from the state. Well, they've added some accountability there, and justifiably so. So the one last thing I'll leave you with, and it's the only way. Do you like this analogy, Robin, or not? Space Mountain? Did you ever go to Disney?
Yes.
You go to Space Mountain?
Yes, that was a good
All right,
analogy.
so this is what this process is like. So you say, I want to build a new school. I want to go to Space Mountain. So you walk up, you get to the very top of Space Mountain. What happens? You take a left, and what? You think you're at the top, and you're ready to get on the ride. What happens? Oh, no, there's another line. And then you look, and you're through the wall. Then you get by that wall, and you think you're just ready to start boarding because you see people getting on. That line just keeps going. That's what this process is like. The state doesn't have all of the money to do all of the projects at once, and it does take time. So they get you at the beginning of the line, and there is a step for everything. So it's not like you're just standing there eating popcorn or just wasting time. There are many steps to the process, and that's what we'll walk you through tonight. So, Superintendent, you want to try to take it from Space Mountain and then put some educational pieces behind this thing here? Sure. I know I was pretty general, but
sure.
So, Superintendent will take it through the next step.
Thank you. I'm Superintendent Desmond, and I am new to the district, so some of you I've met and others I have not. I started July 1, and so this project was already started when I came on board. I have been lucky to work with Craig and his team from Left Field to look specifically at the education plan. And so what you'll see today is a plan that has been developed looking at how we create spaces that are engaging for students, inspiring for our students, and safe for our students and our staff. And so with that, this plan, you will see, is an exciting plan that will build student engagement and hopefully result in improved academic results for all of our students, because that is really what we're focused on here. And so there are spaces here that meet the needs of all of our current learners. And just quickly, if you notice behind this screen, there is a music room. We are not going to have spaces like that in our new facility. Our new facility will have very specific spaces that are geared to the instructional outcomes that we want for each student. And the music space will be its own space. It won't be a space that's competing with a lunchroom. So with that, I will turn it over to our Left Field team, which will bring us through the whole slide deck so that you can see the spaces. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Robin. For anyone who would like translation services, we have Portuguese translation over here, and we have Spanish translation over there. We'll go through the slides, and hopefully, and then we'll have time at the end, nice 20 to 30 minutes for your questions. And we'll do our best to answer them. If we don't have an answer tonight, we can put them on our website, which we'll talk about later, or we can also, we're going to have another couple of these meetings, so we can answer your questions at that time. So quickly start off with introduction. My name is Craig DiCarlo. I'm with Left Field. I'm joined, maybe just give a wave. I'm joined with Linda Laporto from Left Field, Narita Rodriguez from MBS, Daniel Cho from MBS, and Kate Wonka. Where'd you go? Kate's back there, also from MBS. So thank you all for coming. Let's see. So we do have a quorum for building committee meeting members. So Mr. Mayor, would you please call the meeting, the building committee meeting to order?
Okay, we call this meeting to order, and it is 6:40.
Thanks very much. Just a
Seconded
procedure.
by Greg.
Thank you very much.
Go home now, Greg.
All right, so without further ado, I'll turn things over to MDS.
Great, thank you.
I can be your slide
Oh,
guy.
okay, perfect, thank you very much. So I'll go quickly through this portion of the presentation. We did, as the speaker before me say, we did do a very detailed review of the existing building, and certainly looking at it as a renovation was also on the table and an option. As you know, there are many things that the community loves about the school. They love its charm, small size character, the welcoming lobby and the fish pond. So there's many things that people love about the school, and those are certainly things that we value as well. The issue, however, is that most all of these systems, and I think people who spend any time in this building know, they're well past the lifespan of this building. So that's the exterior wall. Do I need the mic at all? Can people hear?
We're competing against a compressor back here.
I can unplug that. Got you. So, is that better? All right. So the systems are basically well past their end of life. So as anyone who spent any time here knows, there's poor circulation, air conditioning, heating and ventilation. The windows and exterior walls are leaking, roofs leaking. So and beyond that, the spaces are simply much too small for modern standards. If you compare it, it's almost, a new building would be almost 40% larger. So really the teaching spaces themselves are substandard. Additionally, there are exterior concerns, as we all know, the Chico Drive and its conflict with the traffic to Samoset that's very congested, and the pickup and drop off, sort of the backup up to Union Street, causes many issues. So beyond that, I think, again, lots of really charming and great spaces, and the teachers do a fantastic job of making the most of what they have. But again, as the superintendent pointed out, you've got a music room on a stage, you have a lack of STEM classrooms, the gym and library are significantly undersized. So there's a lot of issues with preserving this existing building. Next. So as part of this process, we had meetings similar to this one, where we met with all the stakeholders, including teachers, students, and community members. So there was a series of meetings to come up with really the important characteristics and feel of the school, whether it's a renovation or a new project. And I think we can go, some of the takeaways was, one, I think everyone really valued the sort of positive and welcoming atmosphere of this school, and that's something that would need to be retained. They have the indoor-outdoor landscape was really beloved by the community, and certainly I'll mention again the koi pond was something that people just thought was a real center and part of this school. But I think some of the things that were important that they felt might be lacking were sort of a diversity of spaces for all learners that accommodated all learning styles. They wanted to emphasize safety and wellness more in terms of a healthy building environment with proper mechanical systems and lighting and sound control. But at the same time, they really did value that sort of sense of pride and that sense of community that the existing building has.
Next, we'll talk a little bit about the MSBA process. Well, there. So the project is really a partnership between the MSBA and what's called the district, and the district is made up of the city, Leominster Public Schools, and a group of people called the Fallbrook Building Committee. They're the ones who make all the big decisions on the project. The district, so you folks, hire the OPM, you hire the design team, and then eventually we'll hire a builder.
You want to talk about when we started? Yeah, you are. Okay,
Yes,
perfect.
so as the mayor was saying, the MSBA process, they contribute a good amount of funds to the project, which is great, and they have a very specific process that we agree to go through. And they have it by steps. And so it starts off with a statement of interest, which was done back in the summer of 2021. We've progressed through steps 1, 2, 3, and we're now in step 4, which is called schematic design. That's where all that information that the design team has been collecting starts taking shape into an actual building design. So we're looking to have that complete in April. Then we'll move on to more detailed design, construction, which we're assuming is going to take about 3 years. And the school will be open, we're anticipating January of 2029, with the site work, the demo of this building and site work being complete in summer of 2029. Next slide, please. Something that Daniel was touching on earlier, a concern that had been brought up a couple times was, will the new school be big enough? And the short answer is yes. So right now you have, what is it, Jeff, 675 students, somewhere thereabouts, in this physical building. The MSBA and the district agree on an enrollment number, which is only 610. Seems like it's out of step, but the space given to those 610 students is much more than what we have for 675. Daniel was mentioning it's the current school, let's say, is 71,000 square feet. That's where we are. It's almost 105,000 square feet for the new building to house those 610 students. So clearly there's lots of extra space and extra classrooms, 47% larger. Slide. Now we'll talk a little bit about the project schedule. One more slide. So just at a very high level, I sort of hit on this a moment ago. Design for the next, say, 2 years. Construction for a few years. New school open January of 2029. Then we do the demolition of this building and the site work to patch things up and complete the project.
Right. Can you just touch on why it's whether or not it's a choice or the requirements?
Great, yes. So that's a very good point, Jen. It's not, so the MSBA, as Daniel was mentioning, the methods of teaching have advanced over time since 1966. That's when this building was made. And so there are just more things that go on. It used to be that students were taught to kind of have, to be factory workers. And so you'd have that classic situation of all the desks lined up and the teacher at the front of the room just sort of telling them stuff and the students memorizing things. Well, it's way more interactive now. There's science, technology, and engineering classes. There are music spaces for music, spaces for art. And so it's really an evolution of the educational process that's reflected in the physical building that you're going to have. And so the MSBA says, if you've got 610 students, this is how many classrooms you're going to need. This is how big your cafeteria's got to be. This is all based off of studies and learning that the MSBA has been doing since they were founded back in 2004? 2014. So, does that
Yeah, I just
cover
want,
it?
that we were doing it by the mandates versus just.
Right,
one
right.
handbook.
Yes. Awesome. Next slide, please. And now, Daniel Nareda, who's taking over for
Daniel's going to start, and then I'll continue.
Very good.
So beyond studying the existing building, sort of move from that phase on to coming up with a proposal for whether the new school. And we're using an iterative design process or an interactive design process, sort of using meetings similar to this and meetings with the administration and faculty. It's really very much a circular process where we'll meet with them, information gather, come up with a plan, pressure test it with the team members, and then revise it. Sort of actually very similar to how students are taught nowadays on their projects. It's a very sort of circular and iterative process. So again, starting with the site, I think we briefly touched about it. It's a beautiful site. It's in the nature, in the woods. But there are some issues or constraints that make it challenging. One, there is an existing building here. You also have a shared driveway to Somerset. But you also have protected habitat for the wood turtle. You have wetlands limits because of Fallbrook itself, and some other sort of actual constraints on the size of the site. So if you look at it, here's an overhead view. You can sort of see a lot of the areas that are hatched or green or blue are basically ineligible or impossible to build on. And so we took a look at a lot of the sites around the schools, and really the only real feasible site from a practical point of view is the one that's adjacent to Fallbrook, whether that would be for addition or renovation or a brand new building. And it's right, basically right over there. That's really the only feasible site, practical site in this area. And so based on that site, we actually did do many different variations, including 2-story schemes, 3-story schemes, addition, renovation, in order to pressure test and the assumptions and see what fit both the academic program and the actual site. So this one is the basically selected floor plan, and the narrator will go into much greater detail. But it is a 2-story scheme that would be constructed basically on that side of the existing building. The classrooms are in a bar with K1 and 2 on the ground floor, 3, 4, and 5 on the top floor, and then on the front piece has a lot of the public elements such as the gym and the cafeteria, which would be accessible to the public off hours. And then once that building is constructed, you can sort of see in these plans the bus and parent pickup loops are separate, which would help congestion, and it would be constructed basically where we're standing now, sort of in this area. Next one, similar. This is one of the options, very similar. Sort of the interior layouts are slightly bit different, but again, as you can see, because of the site constraints, it's located in the same spot as the other schemes. Next one. This one is a 3-story scheme. We looked at it for potential cost savings with a stacked building. I think there were some concerns about the littlest kids traveling 3 stories. That seemed to be asking a lot, and so for that reason, it was not selected. It didn't seem to meet the academic requirements. And then we did look at a renovation addition scheme, basically building a loop out that side and creating a loop. The floor plan worked pretty well. We could get the parking for parents and the bus drop off over there, get that separated. One of the issues was that this would require phased occupied construction for over 3 years, meaning kids in the building would be essentially in a construction zone for that amount of time. And there was not a significant cost advantage for this scheme in any ways. So I think people felt this was not the best selection for the children, so that was not selected. So I'll talk a little bit about the site and the current design, and I'll hand it over to Narita. So again, as we mentioned, location of the building is located adjacent. Oh, thank you. That's the existing building. It's located right over there. The magenta outline is this building, so you can sort of see the relationship. And then this is the parent drop-off. This is the bus drop-off, separated again, located basically in this area here where the existing building is. And some of the constraints, sort of keeping this, that's the wetlands boundary, and Fallbrook is right here. And so that allows a little bit of open space in the back where we could have a playing field and a lot of the play structures out behind the building. And then I guess I'll turn it over to the narrator for a detailed plans.
Thank you, Daniel. So part of our process, all the options that you just reviewed, included looking at the cost and the time frame for the construction for all the options. So the building committee reviewed all the materials that we provided to the team in order to determine what was the best solution for Fallbrook Elementary School. So what I'm going to go through now is what we called option N1. Back when we had several options, this is a two-story scheme that allowed for the students, like Daniel said, the kindergartners, first graders, and second graders to be on the first floor, and the upper grades on the elementary, the third, fourth, and fifth, to be on the second floor. The blue boxes that you see here, these are the general use classrooms. I'm going to walk you through as you enter the building. This is the main entrance of the building with the main office right off the entrance. We do that in a lot of schools in order to provide security and safety. So there's a level of overseeing of whoever is coming into the school. You have to be buzzed in to the vestibule, and then you get led into the school by whoever's in the main office. The principal's office and assistant principal are located here. Then we have adjacent to the main office, we'll have the nurse's office with exam rooms and offices there with their own toilet room. And across the way is the cafeteria with its own stage, sort of similar to what we have here now, with the kitchen area here. And then these brown boxes are most of the back of house spaces for recycling, trash collection, and those kind of spaces that we need for the building's support. The service entrance will be off of here for deliveries for the kitchen area. Actually, if you can go back one, the site plan. So one of the things that we had to look at, because the Chico Drive, as you know, accesses Samoset, we wanted to make sure that there was always a way to have a service entrance. We looked at doing it in the back of the cafeteria, but because of all the sight lines that we reviewed with our civil engineer, it was difficult for an 18-wheeler to back up into this area, and as well as being seen as people are coming down the hill. So we decided to keep the service entrance here, and then this space is going to become an outdoor learning space for the students. And then the recess area is going to be sort of adjacent to the gym that we're going to look at in the floor plan. One of the things we looked at with the stakeholders was what is the amount of time that it takes for a student to go from the cafeteria to recess, because that's right now that's how they go to recess. So it was important to have direct access, or as close an access from the cafeteria to the outdoor play areas. So then, as I mentioned, this is the gym. Right now we're showing it as a full-size high school gym. Those lines are for right now. We're sort of studying that, whether we need additional space for the spectators, and therefore need to have a smaller basketball court. There's toilet rooms here, and then one of the things that was really important for the city of Leominster was to have a way to provide public access to the cafeteria and the gymnasium during off hours. So we have a set of doors here that can be locked at night, so that these spaces can be shared with the community and used for other events. The pink area, this is a music room that's behind the stage at the same level as the stage, so that if you're having a concert or a performance, you can have the students set up in here before they have their performance here. Because of that, there's a ramp that leads you to the classroom area. There's a grand stair here with an art room and a small library space here, toilet rooms, elevator, and then we have kindergartners are here, first grade and second grade. The classrooms that are pink are the special education classrooms. Some of these are required by the MSBA to be included, but they're definitely, because we didn't need as many of them as they are required, we sort of catered it to what Leominster and Fallbrook requires for the programs that are in the school. There's also going to be smaller classrooms for ELL and for any kind of additional math, science, and English pull-out spaces. And then these smaller rooms we're calling it project rooms. So the idea is to have small spaces for the paraprofessionals or other support staff to help students who need focused learning. Those spaces can also be used for the students when they have a small project or sort of a smaller group that needs focused time. So on the second floor, as I mentioned, we have third, fourth, and fifth grades. We have the larger part of the library and media commons is on the second floor with the STEM classroom adjacent to it, a second art room, and sort of similarly laid out as it is on the first floor with classroom space, project space, and those smaller classrooms that could be utilized by the different specialists and teachers that work at Fallbrook right now. All right, so then we also have started to look at the exterior of the building. These are some of the design guidelines that we have gathered based on a lot of those visioning sessions that Daniel mentioned at the beginning. Some of the ideas was to celebrate Leominster, provide value and efficiency that's really important for the city and for the school, create a welcoming sense of place that was really important for all the students. They felt really welcome when they come into the school every day, and connect with nature. A lot of the students always said that they wanted to be able to have outdoor learning spaces as well as the parents. This is the existing site, which Daniel mentioned, and this is over here is part of where the new school will be built. So we looked at the city of Leominster and all the charm that it has. There's a lot of different scale buildings, as you all who lived here and work here know. It's a lot of connection to nature, given the site that we're in right now in Fallbrook, and the patterns for the different types of buildings, whether they're big or small. And of course, tying it back to the history of Leominster as we develop the design, that will be part of how we look at it. Next. So we also started looking at what are the exterior precedents for the school, and started to look at, how do we make this school that's going to be almost 50% larger feel welcoming and still small, have some natural elements as wood and other shapes that you see in some of the residential parts of Leominster. Amy McCrell, who's our design principal, has started looking at this. She is unfortunately feeling under the weather, not able to join us today, but so I'll do my best here. So this is looking at the three-dimensionally at a very early design of what we're looking at. This would be the main entrance with a canopy in front of it, so that it helps when the parents are getting picked up, so that the students and teachers who are out here have some coverage. This is where the main office is located, the gym, and then the classroom bar. And the thought here is to start to add some gable roofs in order to start to sort of reduce the scale and the feel of the school, so that it starts to feel more like a school within a school, and smaller elements that are connected, but that they have their own identity based on what the function of the spaces are. And then we're starting to look at the orientation of the building. I should have mentioned that before. The classroom building is oriented east-west to capture as much daylight as possible in all the classrooms. And so on some of these larger volumes, we started to add clear story windows on the northern side, which reduces glare and allows for nice soft light into the library, some in the gym, and then in the cafeteria. And this is just a sort of a close-up view of what the entrance might look like. We're still developing this. It's very early on, but we'd love to hear your feedback. That's it for the design. I think we're back to you.
I get the fun part.
Just to talk about the elephant in the room a little bit more, as we all know, what is this project going to cost? At this stage in the process, as Craig showed, the MSBA process consists of many, many different steps. We are in what's called schematic design right now, which really means it's schematically designed, and we just don't have all the final designs, all the final details at this stage. Once the schematic design is being finalized, that is realistically what sets the project budget with the MSBA. With the schematic design study being finalized in approximately April of 2025, that would be where we would have the anticipated costs, and through the schematic design process, we'll go through many iterations of cost studies and comparatively go through all the different stages, and as the MDS team consistently designs more and more detail, we'll have more details of the costs as well. And there'll be more further public meetings once we have more details on the cost estimates and where it's going to land eventually. But at the end of this stage is when we will have the final costs that the MSBA will then consider their part of their reimbursement. The other part that we wanted to mention is, I know this project has been going on for quite a while, since 2021. What we have in front of you here, you can look at this code. We have a project website where we keep updates on where the meetings are being held, where we are in the stage of the process, and any updates, full pictures. And you can also follow along with how the educational programming and all those meetings went and what was said in those meetings, and everything. It's is on this website, so you can follow along the process. And then obviously there'll be more meetings coming up to take everybody through the process and where we are. And actually, the website also has an FAQ section on it, which is really helpful. And you can ask questions. There's an email address where you can submit questions, and just really keep asking questions. We'd love to hear them. We manage the project websites ourselves, so we have all the information that we can get out to the public very, very quickly. And then we actually wanted to just mention also that as part of this process, we'll have the next public meeting, which is scheduled for January 30th. It'll be probably likely back here again, and we'll have considerably more updates as MDS continues to design this building and continue to go through the process.
Thank you, Linda. So now we'd like to open up the floor to any questions you may have. As mentioned, we'll do our best to answer them live. If we don't have an answer, we'll either put it on the website or come present it again in January. If there's a question that you want to ask but don't want to do it in a public forum, the design team and project management team said we'll hang around afterwards, so you can just come right over to us and ask us in person. So what have you got? Yes, sir.
I got a series of questions, but I'll start with the educational specification one first. You mentioned that the third option of going to a three-story building is off the table for consideration because it would require kindergartners to go up 3 floors essentially. Okay. But yet, in the plan you show, you're showing the all the extra facilities or ancillary facilities such as the library being on the the second floor of the building anyway in the present plan. So what would change? You wouldn't, I would imagine, you put the library on the third floor, which would require those kids to walk 3 floors to reach the library. So what was the premise of mixing the third floor? Because you have somewhat of a limited area to build a building. Because of the restrictions of the waterways and wetlands. And I'm just thinking that if you go 3 stories, you would be able to condense the footprint overall, which might give you more area for parking or just traffic flow and those kinds of things. So I'm just curious what the reason was, again. Other than saying, well, we don't want the kids that have to go 3 floors. It sounds, because it appears that they have the current design.
Right, so thank you. So the decision, so all those different options we looked at, including the 3-story option.
Can you just repeat the question?
Oh, okay,
So
yes.
hard to hear between the fans and the compressor. You could summarize it?
Yeah, sure. And tell me if I go wrong. So the question is, there was a 3-story option that was looked at. The only sort of pro or con we mentioned up here was that young students, say kindergartners, first graders, having them go all the way up to the 3rd floor and back down seemed a bit much. And so would a smaller, a taller but more compact building be further away from sort of setbacks, more advantageous? So we did look at sort of all of the aspects of the building, not only getting up and down, but also the cost impacts. We looked at, what were some of the other aspects that we looked at of the building?
Some of the concerns were safety with spreading the staff too much and not having
Thank you.
enough staff coverage to support all of the programs.
Yep, that's a very good point. So staff usage of the building, staff coverage of the building. We did look at sort of relative cost estimating, and we found that to go up that extra story included some additional costs. So there weren't as many savings as we originally thought. We said, okay, well, it's going to be a smaller roof. That's an expensive item. It's going to be less envelope. That's an expensive item. But there were additional costs to say more stairs, a higher elevator that ended up kind of eating away at some of those perceived savings. So what else?
Safety, getting the kids out of the building sooner in event of emergency.
Yes, yep, that's another good one. So Greg just reminded me of getting the kids, from downstairs sort of in the evacuation situation. And what
Was there a water pump issue? For that?
So that's a good point, Jeff. So the water pressure at the street is a certain PSI. That'll get you up so far in the air. 1 story is no problem, 2 stories, no problem. When you get up to that 3rd story, then you start the potential for needing a pump room. And so that's more equipment to maintain, it's more cost up front. So yeah, so we did a thorough analysis, pros and cons for each of the options. And then presented them to the building committee. And the building committee asked questions and then ultimately decided that this 2-story option, N1, was sort of the best for the community.
Regarding the gymnasium, or new gymnasium, you mentioned that potentially you might have to shrink the physical size of the gymnasium to put in seating. And if you did that, of course, now you no longer have a regulation gymnasium. Correct?
Well, so to clarify, so the question is about the gymnasium and the comment about changing the size of the gymnasium. So we are fixed at a 6,000 square foot gymnasium. So the room itself will be 6,000 square feet. What Nareda or Daniel was mentioning was adjusting the paint lines on the court. So what's shown up here was a high school basketball court. And then this was another decision point, so we worked with the building committee, talked about the pros and cons. And the direction we have right now, which is not one that has to stay, but is to do a middle school size court. So it would be appropriate for the elementary school usage, it would be appropriate for middle school, it would be appropriate for some league play, which is not dependent so much on the court size, but that will allow for more spectator seating because you're shrinking the paint lines and then moving it over in the room and then having more bleachers.
Has the state changed their policy? Because this building was put in the 1960s. And at the time, because it was solely an elementary school setting, they didn't reimburse for locker rooms, locker rooms in the school. If you did, you had community to pay for the full cost of that. Has that changed at all? Because if you're designing it to be used for, obviously, the community as well, and older students, there would seem to be a need to have locker rooms in this facility now, the new facility designed to build. Has that changed in any way as far as the state's perspective on that?
I think you're right that there are no locker rooms in an elementary school. You can have them in a middle school, in a high school, of course. But so this project will not include locker rooms. So it would be more come in dressed in your basketball uniforms.
And regarding the actual funding source, I know the Mass School Building Authority has changed dramatically in the last 2 decades as far as the way they fund these projects. If the building were being accepted right now and built today, going forward, what is the present rate of reimbursement for a project like this from the state?
So that's a great question. So the question was about the reimbursement rate of the MSBA. So just a quick overview. So the project will have a cost. We'll have the construction cost, and then we'll have the total project cost. Construction cost is for the building at the site. Total cost includes everything associated with the project: furnishings, equipment, professional fees, etc. So the MSBA has a number that they will provide. We haven't gotten to that point yet. We have, for the feasibility study, which is what we're in now, feasibility study schematic design, I think it's a 76% reimbursement of eligible expenses. So there are certain things that they don't participate in. There are certain caps at which costs above they won't participate in. And so you have let's say a paper reimbursement rate, which is that 76%, and then you have an effective reimbursement rate, which at the end of the project, we tally it all up, and it's usually somewhere about 55% of whatever the paper rate is. So if that holds true, then we're talking somewhere in the, I think it was like 45 to 48% effective reimbursement. And so whatever the total project cost is, the MSBA will put in their share, and the district puts in their share. So there are some opportunities for other monies coming into the district that the project team's looking into. One of them is Mass Save. So for energy efficient design, they offer reimbursements. They won't pay for the whole school, but it certainly can help. Another one that we're looking at is potentially looking at is the Inflation Reduction Act of 2022. There are, again, it won't pay for the whole thing, but there may be some monies that we can get from the federal government to help offset that city share of the cost. And that's a new policy from the MSBA, by the way. Prior to sort of the inflation of 2022, the MSBA would take back any monies that were gained from third-party funders, but they've recently changed that policy. I think it was a year and a half ago they changed that, so that districts would be able to take advantage of those incentive programs and reimbursement programs that are out there.
I think it's also important to point out, Craig, when you talk about the reimbursement rate, you have these things that the MSBA does not reimburse the city for. They still make us do those things. They still make us take those steps and whatnot. They just don't pay for them. So that's not arbitrarily our choice.
That's right. That's right. So the sort of big picture, and forgive me, MSBA, if I'm getting this wrong, but the big picture is the MSBA, I'm talking to the camera if they watch the video, the MSBA later, the idea is they want to spread the wealth throughout the Commonwealth. So they don't want all the monies to be used up in just a few communities. They want to kind of spread it around. And this is the mechanism they've come up with, spreading it around.
So along those lines, it wasn't that long ago in the city that we went through a major redevelopment or refurbished our high school, which was built in 1965, not that many years before this one. And I know that unless they changed the policy recently, it was to be determined whether they would back up or reimburse a community for either a new building or a refurbished building would be their decision. So I'm assuming that you have been able to convince the MSBA that this building is not, or they've determined it's not able to be redeveloped or refurbished to meet the educational specifications. And that's why we're now looking at a brand new building instead.
Yes, so the question is about the MSBA's decision-making for whether addition renovation or new construction makes the most sense. And so nowadays, the MSBA does leave that decision largely up to the community. So we went through a process where, with the design team, looked at several variations of both addition renovation, repair only, which would not work for you, and new construction. And the building committee decided that new construction seemed to make the most sense as far as value, as far as longevity, as far as least disruption to the students so that they could continue to go to school here while that's being constructed. So all those were factored in. But then that is presented to the MSBA in a report called the Preferred Schematic Report, in which the MSBA Board of Directors reviews and then either agrees with or does not agree with the district's preference. And in this case, as in many, we all did our homework and the MSBA agreed, and so then we're permitted to move into schematic design with just the new build option.
Maybe, Craig, it might be worth mentioning that somewhat to you, obviously, when you have a building that has significant issues with the size of classrooms, that option basically just becomes sort of voided. And traditionally, if you're looking at those costs, just to do a code upgrade of a building, by the time you get an actual project going in, and if you subtract the reimbursement rate from the MSBA, they typically almost equal out, and you're getting absolutely no gain from it.
John, when we did the high school, remember, we already had added another cafeteria prior to that. We had done the roofs. I mean, so a lot of work had already been done. We already did those other expansions. So we had something to start with. We had that beautiful auditorium. We had added gymnasium. So when we did the renovation expansion, we already had something to work with.
Oh, I know. I lived through it because when I graduated, they were literally putting that new addition on 78. So.
No, but I'm just saying, so we did the addition to the addition to the addition.
Oh, I know.
This time, it was the mechanicals, some addition that we put on, and renovation of the building. In this case, there's nothing to start with.
No, I just wanted to clarify and make sure that the state was behind the idea so that we wouldn't be taking up the whole cost.
Everything we did, we had to make a presentation.
Oh, I
to the
understand how the
state.
process works.
And yeah, so everything we did, we could have the greatest ideas, but they had to approve.
Right.
So thus far, we've approved everything that we've presented.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner. Question?
Yeah, I guess I must have missed something. Is there any plans about solar heating versus wind power?
So the question is about solar power for the heating system
Versus wind power.
or wind power. So great question. So in schematic design, the design team and their engineers are looking into what's called life cycle cost analysis. So there are all these different mechanical systems and options that are available in the market, and they're going to look at what each one will cost up front, and then how much they'll cost sort of for the operation of the system for X number of years, and then eventually the cost to repair, replace, or demolish. That's a mechanism to help to help the building committee decide what mechanical system makes the most sense. Ease of maintenance, ease of operation, operating costs, these are all going to be factored in. So we don't know yet what the mechanical system is going to be. There have been some early assumptions about what it's going to be, but when it comes to green energy, sustainable mechanical systems, that's something that we're looking into. So for example, like a geothermal well field is something that will be looked at. Those do have a very high kind of upfront cost, so maybe it won't be right for this project, but it is something we will look into.
When you say when you say the upfront cost, is there any methodology of looking with, you mentioned, not save, help me with this, there must, between solar power or wind power,
Yep.
Have you done any study about where the wind comes around here? Where's the best shine? Because you were showing the building over there, there was a picture you had about the ambient lighting. Did I hear that right?
Yes.
The daylighting.
Yes, narrator was talking about positioning the building in such a way that it
And
will
that's
still.
where my little
Advantage.
mind started working.
Yes.
What about solar panels?
So solar panels is something that we'll look at for sure. Many communities find it makes the most sense for them to build the building without solar panels, but it's called solar ready. So they'll be set up with space for induction units, like a room, conduits, empty conduits that the solar panels eventually, if they're installed on the roof, will have a path down to the inverter room and the electrical room. The structure will be designed for the added load of photovoltaic system. Portions of the roof will be reserved as no mechanical systems poking up here because we want nice, large photovoltaic arrays. So that'll all be in the design. But then after the project is all done, turned over, there are a number of ways that the community can get the photovoltaic panels installed. They can either be purchased outright, it could be a power leasing agreement, or power purchase agreement. So there are a number of ways to incorporate photovoltaic panels into the project, and those will all be studied, and the ones that whatever is found to be most advantageous will be included. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because in my little mind, please forgive me, I was wondering, would it make the construction of the school faster or take longer because of the added expense of the solar heat versus the wind power?
So the question is about solar heat, wind power, and the duration of
The
construction.
cost of building the school, would it?
And the cost? Yes, so all of these systems do have a cost. So a school with no wind power is going to be less expensive than a school with wind power, just equipment-wise. But Inflation Reduction Act is something that we're going to look into as a way for to get some money back for these green energy systems that we'd be adding. I don't know of any schools that really have wind power. It's much more common to have geothermal, which is fluids pumped down into the ground and then to put excess building heat or to pull heat out, depending on the season. That's much more common for schools, and then photovoltaic panels, as you were mentioning. Many schools, if not all of them nowadays, have photovoltaic panels.
All right, thanks. I was just asking.
No,
No, it's a great
it's definitely,
question.
it's on the top of our minds as well. So thank you. Yes?
I know you can't pin down an actual cost of the project because one is bigger than higher as well. But given your experience, present day experience in designing a school of this similar size for an elementary community, what right now would this come in at ballpark?
So,
What's the average, to build a facility of this,
yep.
meeting all the specifications?
So the question is like, sort of what's the average cost of a school of this size and complexity? And so for, I think we're at 105,000 square feet. We're anticipating total project cost. So as I was mentioning earlier, you've got the estimated construction cost, which is for the building and the site. And then total is everything else included. So that total project cost, we're anticipating is going to be somewhere between 110 and 120 million dollars. That's for the whole project. And out of that, and we'll have, at the end of schematic design, we'll have an actual number that is our budget, and that's one that will be agreed upon between the district and the MSBA, and that's what we'll follow for the rest of the project. So there'll be a very specific number in there. And within that number are what we call contingencies. So we've got unknowns that we know about, and we've got unknowns that we don't know about, and so we've got money built in there to that budget that will help address those things. So, yeah,
Includes escalation as well.
and thank you very much, Linda. Yeah, it includes escalation. You got it. So, end of schematic design. So the January or March meeting, come on back. We'll have some more information for you. Other questions? Yes.
Superintendent does get excited that a main priority is student engagement, so I'm just curious if there's a plan for keeping classrooms cool, especially in the summer.
So the question is about second floor classrooms, keeping the
I
temperature.
don't know, I don't wanna say, is there gonna be AC in the classroom, like, is the plan for good airflow? Because it can be really hot and really disruptive. And none of the schools in this district, to my knowledge, have air conditioning or like good fans or ceiling fans in the classrooms. It's really hot.
So every school has to be built with new mechanical system that includes ventilation so that, like I said, I'm not gonna say air conditioning for sure, but then the other part of the, the building was built in the 1960s, doesn't have a lot of insulation between the wall and the exterior probably, not much at all. And the windows are pretty thin right now. So we'll have most likely either double pane or triple pane windows. So that will sort of stop a lot of the cold or heat coming through the windows, as well as a lot more insulation both on the exterior wall and on the roof. And that will help maintain a more, regulate the temperature in the classrooms. And that's one of the other reasons why we also wanted to orient the classroom buildings east-west, because you have good daylight on the south side, but you can also, with some of the exterior shading that we use nowadays, you can also reduce the amount of solar heat gain into the building, which also is one of the reasons why it gets really hot. We're also looking at, because since COVID, I know there are some operable windows here. We're talking with our engineers about what it means to maintain operable windows. That's something that's really important for the health and wellness of the students, so that there is some natural ventilation on the days like today where it was nice outside and you don't need, the heat on.
Teachers are gonna want to open their screens or something, but some buildings, especially the second floor, we do worry about little kids, and even working at the middle school, we have just wide open windows and there's no screen unless the teacher buys a screen.
Oh, interesting.
So,
Yes.
if you have a window, it should have no really sturdy screen on the other side that if it's able to be opened.
Right, so there are regulations now, like building code regulations, that the windows can only open a certain amount, and that's to prevent any fall. And if we do have all those operable windows, we'll definitely have insect screens to prevent any.
Thanks, Narita. And not to throw any shade on the designers from the 1960s, but the expectation of modern day design is occupant comfort is up there. Maybe not so much back in the day.
But they also didn't have the system.
They didn't have it.
That's true. That's true. We have-
I had to learn on the log. That's how long it's been since there's a log outside, and that's where we learned. But also the windows are tinted today. They're not, like these aren't, none of these are really tinted or anything. None of them have UV protection or anything, so that cuts down the roof. We even noticed the difference. We got new windows at City Hall. We already noticed the difference inside the building with the sun that would just blast through and beat up the building, so it was intolerable. And now, just the tinted windows and the insulated windows really help.
Yes, building technology has certainly come a long way, for sure. Other questions?
Well, just to circle back on the question, I was formerly a high school teacher where our building was upgraded, built in the 1960s, like when I was in high school, but it was completely redone. And we didn't have officially air conditioning in the new building. The system instead was dehumidification. So in essence, it acted like air conditioning. So the whole high school was renovated, new HVAC system, dehumidification. It was basically air conditioning. So that's kind of one way you get around it, because I think at the time, when our project was done, which is 20 years already, that it was done, the state was not going to reimburse the community for the air conditioning in the building. So that's how they got around the dehumidification. It virtually created an air conditioning problem.
Yep, that makes a lot of sense. Did everyone hear that? Dehumidification as a mechanism for increasing comfort. Yep. What is that? Latent heat? Is that what that's called?
Yeah.
When you suck the moisture out, it takes a little bit of that latent heat.
It does work.
Yes. Any other questions? Let's see how we're doing on time.
Well, this is
Yes.
a question.
despite the challenges it's building. I think that each school and the teaching staff should recognize for creating a welcoming environment and also for very healthy health. School is doing a great job despite the challenges they have to deal with. So I think, to the mayor, whatever you can do to push this through, because these students and the staff deserve still, but they're doing it without the building. Even though, we grew up in the 60s, where, 2024 was a huge program, give the students what they deserve in our state.
Thank you very much. Yes, here. So the comment was just that the staff and administration have been doing a great job over the years working with what they've got, which very true, very true. Anything else? Fantastic. All right, well, thank you again all for coming. Please do check out that website. Thank you, Jeff, for getting the space all set up, and your team, and Butch. Thank you for Leominster TV for coming out, Valerie. Thank you very much. Have a great night, everybody. And as I mentioned, we'll stay around here in case someone does have a question and want to come up and talk to us. Motion to adjourn the building committee moved by Jen, seconded by Greg. All in favor? Opposed?